Oh shit! What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Square the Circle Music Channel. It's me, your old pal Mage. Remember me? Here at the Square the Circle Music Channel, we talk about, that's right, record collecting, music appreciation of all types and things and sorts. Welcome, have a seat. Let's have a chit chat, shall we? What should we talk about tonight, Mage? Well, a couple nights ago, you caught me. I was thinking about how valuable my record collection is, and all the little gems and little bits and pieces of gold that are scattered throughout. And I was just kind of like watching everyone else have fun, appraising their little bits and pieces and showing them off. And so I wanted to do the same. So you can scroll down on my history from a few days ago. You can watch that, and then you can see my little addendum to that idea, which I'm going to do today. And I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. My most valued records that simply don't have a price tag on them. For a myriad of reasons, I'd like to go through those with you tonight, and we can talk about how I feel about these albums, what they mean to me. And like I said, you can't put a price tag on these. I mean, you can for anyone else, but for me, they're priceless. They have all sorts of like sentimental, intrinsic, whatever you want to call it, sort of just kind of like, you know, importance to me, to this guy. So like I said, you know, nothing in this chunk is going to be, you know, very, it's not going to be worth any real money, but it's a pretty cool little chunk. So I'm going to bring them out and show them to you if you don't mind. First on the list for me tonight, I've talked about this album a lot because it means a lot to me personally. It also is a badass album that belongs, you know, on top 10 lists from here to eternity for lots of different reasons. But, you know, this is that magnificent English, you know, art, rock, you know, psychedelic art, pop. And then they kind of oopsie daisy tripped into a puddle of goo and created like something a lot more important and a lot more cool to me and to a lot of people. Because I feel like these guys were heavily instrumental in the creation of progressive rock kind of really, you know, taking off into like greener pastures, so to speak. And yeah, the personal stories too. Talking about Moody Blues, their days of future past. For me personally, houses a lot of sentimentality. You could say years and years and years ago, I caught my father singing some karaoke at like a family gathering, or it was like maybe it was at a late night at a pub or something like that. And we were karaokeing, and he decided to sing Nights in White Satin. We all got a big kick out of it. And as he sits down and he takes a pull off of his beer or whatever, he looks at me and he's like, "You know what, son?" And he elbows me. And he's like, "You were conceived of that song." And I just kind of like, oh God. You know, I blushed and almost vomited and kind of, you know, half cracked up at the same time. But that's always got kind of like a fun little dinner table conversation about it. But also this album has a lot of personal meaning to me because I can remember back, this song, particularly the song, is probably the first music I can remember as a 5-year-old, like toddling around the house and bumping into shit and like sifting through stacks of like, you know, magazines and records and just all kinds of funny shit on the shag carpet, and, you know, looking at my mother in the kitchen, and, you know, just kind of like you have those vivid memories. And Tuesday Afternoon, the song Tuesday Afternoon, and that piano part, that is my earliest memory. You know, musically speaking too, like besides, you know, Row Your Boat and Jesus Loves You, you know, like one of the first songs I can remember from my childhood. So this album has a lot of meaning to me. It's also just a badass album. It's totally priceless to me. So yeah, there's that. Next on my list tonight is, you know, in similar fashion, just reminds me of my mother. And this was a hand-me-down from my mom. We loved this when I was growing up in the very early 80s. and it was just always on the table. I've talked about it before, but this is an Oregon group from Portland, Oregon, from the mid to late 70s, and my mother used to like go out and see these guys around the town. She was from Seattle. She moved into Portland when she was like finishing high school, in like 1975 or 1976. And yeah, she used to go see this group all the time. They're called Howling Gail. Really badass, group of like 5 or 6 gentlemen and women singing traditional folk songs from, the British Isles and all over kind of, the seafaring nations of Western and Northern Europe. So just a lot of really kick-ass kind of, drunken sailor songs and just kind of all kinds of wonderful stuff. So really fantastic group. This album, like I said, just, really means the world to me. This was gifted to me by my mother. Been carrying it around for 40 plus years. So really cool, very special to me. And if any of you guys like anything that's like, folk, kind of fused with folk rock of the 70s, but really it's still just very traditional, very, to the roots of Irish and Scottish folk music. So very cool. I'm gonna take a left turn at Atlanta, Georgia, and one of my favorite groups. This again is just priceless to me because I bought this personally, like from the band at their merch booth, on a hot ass October day in Sacramento at this festival I went to. In 2016, I went to the Aftershock Festival, and these guys were just like, the last, very bottom and fine print at the bottom of the poster. They played at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the first day of the festival, right when it opened up. And, it just, I like crowded the stage with like 4 people to watch these guys. I love the shit out of them. They're called Whores. This is their first, I guess you could say it's an EP. It's kind of short. But this was their first real like release on vinyl as this band. Their lead singer, songwriter, guitar player, Christian Lambach, he has been in many other projects with many other names, and but it's all kind of always been this kind of like really fantastic style that he has, that kind of like, you can tell was kind of like created out of the sauce that like, the 90s of like, Seattle sound, like Melvins, Harvey Milk, stuff like that. These guys are really kind of like carrying that fucking flame in a really awesome way. And they're all like, of that age. They've got to be in their probably mid to late 40s. And they're fantastic. Anyway, Christian Lambach, really fucking cool guy. I've chit-chatted with him in real life. I've chit-chatted with him online. He always like answers all of the Facebook Messenger posts you put on there. He's a fucking hilarious guy. And he's an incredible musician, incredible guitar player. He signed like the mailer, the protective mailer that I had to put this in, and he like signed on it and everything. And so I have his signature on a cardboard mailer because I didn't want him to sign the record for some reason. I don't know why. I'm a weirdo. But yeah, this is, like I said, a priceless album to me for that reason. Great memories, really fucking cool bands. I've seen them twice since that, I think, yeah. And they're coming again. They're coming to Portland, so I'm going to check them out. This album, Clean, of theirs, priceless to me. In similar fashion, same kind of idea, and hell, it might have even been right around the same period in time. Yeah, it was just a year later I saw these guys. Right after I discovered them, when they released this album in 2017, talking about the band Elder. And this album, Reflections of a Floating World, this really kind of was a game changer for them. They got a lot of notoriety, started playing really big halls and really big like show and event halls and stuff like that. And we're packing out venues that, 400, 500 seat venues. It's pretty cool. And I got to see them before that kind of all happened, like small club in Portland. Walked up to the merch. I took this with me. This is a European press that I had because I had 2. I took this one because I was like, maybe I'll see them like outside, after the show or somewhere around in the neighborhood. I just kind of instinctively took it with me in my book bag. Good thing I did, because I walked right into the show venue and there's like hardly anybody in there. I look right at their merch booth, and there's fucking Nick DeSalvo, the singer, guitar player, or songwriter for this band, the lead man for this band, just sipping on a beer at their merch booth. No one around. I just walked up to him, talked to him for like 10 minutes straight, probably really fucking weirded him out pretty good. Yeah, asked him if he wouldn't mind scrawling his chicken scratch across there. So I got a signed copy by Nick DeSalvo. I adore these guys. Everything in the way of like where their career began was just really inventive, cool, psychedelic, kind of doomish, hard rock. And they've since just really burgeoned into a really splendid, fucking heavy prog psych rock band. Getting very progressive and very cool and creative with what they do. And so, yeah, another priceless one for me. Signed. Talked about this one a few times recently. Again, just kind of has really strong sentimentality to me. This is like, you know, probably on my greatest albums of all time. It's got to be number 3 or number 2. I can't remember my list from a couple months ago. I did do a list of my greatest of all time albums. I believe this is my number 2. What I said on my list on my video was number 2. I think I still feel that way. Talking about Tool's 10,000 Days. This has, obviously for, you know, reasons that are pretty transparent, is that I'm a idiot Tool fan and I'm crazy about them and everything they do. This is, I believe, their finest work. Their most recent is, I'm not saying it's not good, I'm just saying this one's way better in my opinion. This was definitely the pinnacle of their career. These days in 2006, 2007, 2008, when they toured this album, and why this has so much value to me too, beyond it being one of the greatest albums ever made, it's just, they never did an official pressing of it. There's numerous bootlegs or, you know, unofficial pressings. This one's like an unofficial pressing. And they lingered out there for like a few years, and then they all got bought up and no one else continued to do it. So they're just like really hard to get a hold of decent copies of this. And the moment someone does another like kind of unauthorized, you know, grab the digital files and put a bunch of money into these little private pressings or however they do it, they get bought up real quick, and then suddenly they're like $200 again, $300. It's like the last time I saw a copy of this specific one for sale on eBay, I think it was like $200, and now they're just poof, they're gone again. Kind of crazy. So this is the only album of theirs that they never bothered to officially press on vinyl. For some reason, the band just was just like, forget it. They had no more like wind in their sails by that time, and they just had already gotten Fear Inoculum out, and they're just like, we just don't have the time and the money and the effort, you know, or just the energy to like do a bunch of just, you know, issues and reissues and just this and that. So they just probably decided to scrap any idea or whatever of trying to do a real issuing of this. So means the world to me. One of my most valued. Talk about bang for your buck. I've mentioned this a million times as well. This was on my list of the greatest albums of 2010. And when you buy something at the record store for $14 or $15, and it literally just does not leave the front stack of your records for like a year and a half or more. I play this almost every single day still, at least every other day at some point. This is just every day, every time of day music. A duo called the North Americans. Yeah, album's called Roped In. Like I said, released in 2020, and it's just really mellowed out, fucking chill scape, like just, you know, acoustic guitar and lap steel. And it's wonderful. I love everything about it. And when you buy an album, like I said, for that little money, and you really get your money's worth, you get miles out of it. I fucking love this album so much. I'll never let go of this. It's such a great group. So yeah, everybody check that out. The North Americans, Roped In, it's called. Really cool. This one just has so much value to me because it's it really kind of represents a really fantastic period in my life when I was kind of just waking up again from a long, dark, dirty, dark sleep. I've mentioned before my battles with addiction to substances. But this album came around right at a really important time when I was just kind of like I said, just kind of waking up to the world again as an adult with a clear head, you know, and eyes wide open. And this album was kind of the soundtrack, part of the soundtrack to that. It was when I had just kind of really newly discovered classic progressive rock. Because I was a kid of the 90s, and I didn't know any of this shit existed until I was well into adulthood. And this was an instrumental, very important album to me. Upon first, you know, catching wind of all these great prog bands out of the 70s and 80s, these guys were more of kind of like a jazz-inspired jazz rock band right out of the gates. But it was pretty apparent what their, you know, love and passion was for, and where they were going with their sound and what they were doing by, you know, 1974 and more into 75 when they did the Snow Goose, you know, conceptual, beautiful orchestral, symphonic, you know, kind of stuff. And they just kept, you know, they do a kind of a pop album, but then they do a conceptual album, and they did that all the way through the mid and late 70s, you know, Rain Dances and Breathless and whatever else, you know, and then they pump out a really nice conceptual piece again, just a real art piece. And that's how I feel about this. It's just absolutely masterful. Again, an album that is on my top 10 greatest albums of all time, in my personal opinion. Camel, the band Camel, and their 1981 album Nude. It's absolutely priceless to me. Like I said, I really love, you know, pop sensible progressive rock. But especially when they can take it down these kind of avenues. Like, this album is like almost all of it, the bulk of it is instrumental, and that's what they were doing, you know what I mean? Like with the Snow Goose, and then, you know, with Moon Madness and all of that, just like their strong suit, in my opinion, is instrumental tracks. And this album just is so thematic and beautiful. Huge, you know, huge chunks of it. I'm talking like a full, you know, 8, 9, 10 minute, 12-minute chunks. 3 full tracks are all these just kind of like segue, you know, instrumental pieces that are just magnificent. So a really beautiful journey. Everybody check this out. Yeah, it's again, priceless to this guy. And this one too, when I first kind of like, you know, woke up to adult life, and I was like, wow, I got a few extra bucks in my pocket now, because I'm not, you know, buying, you know, giant bottles of whiskey every single day. I could afford to start a record collection again. And so I made that my modus operandi for many years, as kind of a support therapy to not pick up the bottle again. This album was really a huge part of that. So that's why it has such a wonderful feeling to me. This was the first Tangerine Dream album that I ever bought of, the album Rubicon. So just brings back really great memories. My daughter's name is Ruby as well, and so this always just has, like, you know, good feels to it. And I'm not gonna get emotional. So yeah, that's all I'll say about this one. I love it. Yeah, this album reminds me of my dad. My dad's family, my whole dad's side of the family. You know, 3rd, 4th generation, maybe. No, 3rd generation of the major family here in Oregon. And, you know, good salt of the earth type people, farming type people, cowboy type people. And that's, you know, this is the kind of music that was on in the house around Grandpa and Grandma's house. You know, they had property out in a small town called Pleasant Hill, here in Western Oregon, and, you know, they had some acreage, and even when they were young people, they were, you know, working on farms and learning how to do all that kind of like old-timey American shit, you know. That's part of my family. That's where we come from. This was the type of stuff that was on when, you know, when there wasn't spiritual music on the radio. You know, Grandpa and Grandma were whistling tunes like this from the Sons of the Pioneers. Cool, clean water. You know, singing songs like, you know, Get Along Little Dogies, and, you know, the Red River Valley, that kind of shit. You know, this just always reminds me of my father and his family. It's a really magnificent album. Totally priceless to me. These aren't, you know, worth anything, obviously. It means the world to me. Another one that reminds me of Mom. You know, this was something as soon as we'd get out of the bathtub at night after dinner, and you know, we'd get trying to, you know, get us ready for bed. This was always one of the albums that would get put on, and we'd just dance around like, you know, crazy fucking kids to this. The Police, Synchronicity, 1983. Hugely instrumental in me and my development as a you know, a person who enjoys rock music. This was huge, always has been. I can never ever get sick of this fucking album. This album is absolute magic to me. I love all the players. Sting is a really great bass player and songwriter, mildly douchebaggy, you know, very mildly, but you know, he had his moments. We've all had our moments, right? But yeah, Stuart Copeland as a drummer, one of my very favorite rock drummers of all time. Love the shit out of his style. He and Andy Summers, is it Andy Summers? Yeah, Andy Summers, the guitar player, they a match made in heaven, if you ask me. Just kind of that real, you know, top of the beat, angular, kind of, you know, where that like, kind of reggae influence comes from. You know, I mean, I guess from Sting too, and just because he was always so, you know, 1 and 3, just kind of like downbeat heavy, whilst the other guys are hitting all those syncopated and notes, you know, and just what wonderful, you know, comparisons stylistically and just how they were kind of tit for tat. They always worked that way. Great lyrical subject matter, kind of, you know, popping my mind open to like, you know, all this kind of like, you know, Jungian psychology and just, you know, interesting thematic kind of shit that they talk about in this album. And so, yeah, this one is another one of those. It's just like totally fucking priceless. You can find this in every single bin in every record store, you know, from here to Timbuktu. But every time I find a copy for a modest price, I have to really inspect it and make sure, because the copy I have is pretty absolutely damn near mint these days. So I don't think I'll need a new copy for a long time. Yeah, love the shit out of that album. Means the world to me. Huge one that's priceless again. I grew up in a household that, again, was, you know, we had lots of folk music blasting through the house, especially Irish and Scottish folk music. All of that stuff just really made our hearts sing. And this band especially, Moving Hearts. This is an Irish, you know, pop folk band. You know, they take a lot of just like traditional jigs and reels and, you know, stuff from Scotland and Ireland, and they just put a kind of a pop twist on it, a new age kind of twist. But most of it's pretty rock, and it's pretty fucking great. Like a majority of the members of this band, I've talked about this before, were founding members of the musicians that played for the troupe Riverdance. Yeah, so you can, you know, you can hear the similarities and the correlations, and just kind of like, this is straight up Riverdance music without the dancing. It's fucking dope. I love the shit out of it. Totally priceless to me. This is like, it happens to be an Irish import, an Irish pressing. The American issue of this didn't have this cool fucking art. This is much more beautiful. Yeah, I love putting this on. This album means the world to me. Wow, here it is. One of my most valued records, again. This was the first record, I think. Yeah, this had to be the first record I purchased when I had just gotten my life back together a little bit, and I had just begun to discover the powers of progressive rock and how much I loved it. And this album was just kind of seminal to me in that period of my life. And yeah, I could talk for an hour about this album and what it means to me personally. Yeah, you guys know its powers. Tales from Topographic Oceans, 1973, by the band Yes. Yeah. That's all I'm going to talk about that. This one reminds me of my kids. They love this album. Even still, they're shitheads these days. They're growing up so fast. My daughter's almost a teenager. And my son's getting big too, but they still like to put on music and act like nerds and dance around the house. It makes me so happy, and this album is so great for that. It's that Mannheim Steamroller Band. Mannheim Steamroller and their Fresh Air series. They did at least like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these fucking albums. I don't know. This was from like 1978. This was the third part of the series. It's magnificent. Again, it's just, you know, Irish, Scottish folk music, some other tinges of like, you know, Eastern European stylings as well, but all mixed up with, you know, contemporary electronic pop, you know, pop rock. It's pretty cool. It's really great. So, means the world to me. Here's a really cool one that you guys aren't going to know about. Unfortunately, you should know about it. But this is a band that I was in this band for a short while here, it's been well over a decade now, about a decade ago. And my homeboy, Davis Lukrich, he's still performing. He goes by the moniker Davis IL or Davis Ill. You ought to look him up. He's performing in and around everywhere in LA, everywhere in the Bay Area. I believe he still calls San Francisco home. For a brief period, about a decade ago, he lived here in Eugene, Oregon. I met the guy through mutual friends, and they needed a drummer. And I auditioned, and I was accepted and joined their band. We did some recordings. I did a couple recordings with them in the studio that we rehearsed. Homeboy, shout out Ben Schaff. Ben Schaff, still here in Eugene, Oregon. Amazing producer, engineer, songwriter, drummer, guitar player, everything. You know, musician extraordinaire. He produced this album, engineered it, played half the fucking instruments on it. It's magnificent. Their drummer that Davis was using back in when he moved back to San Francisco is equally as incredible. Patrick Weber is his name. Really fantastic drummer. My drumming was just a little different, just kind of more, just kind of drunk and disorderly. That's kind of where I was at my life when I was doing this. Just kind of, you know, playing a lot of D&D, if you know what I mean. A lot of being drunk and disorderly, but this album is fucking fantastic. There's gotta be versions of this out there digitally somewhere. Maybe look in SoundCloud, maybe look in Spotify, who knows. But yeah, he released this called Growler, his band called Growler, GROWWLER. Album's called The Even Tenor of Growler. Like I said, I did not perform on this album, but it's really magnificent. If you guys can find it online, you should listen to it. Both Davis and Ben are amazing songwriters. I love them. I miss playing music with them. Shout out, guys. Yeah, thanks for the LP, Davis. I immediately, when you pressed these a couple years ago, you know, you talked to me online, and I was like, hey, man, how much for one of those? And you're like, dude, boom, it's in the mail. It came like in less than 2 days. And thank you very much, my man. You wrote me a real sweet note on the inner sleeve, calling me like a sexy tub thumper or something like that. And you wrote a cool little personal note in there about our time together in your band, Growler. So thanks again, buddy. Love this LP. I still spin it all the fucking time. It's a really great album. Maybe one of these days I'll be on a vinyl record, playing drums on a vinyl record. Who knows? Getting down to the last little bit of it. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys, and talking about my most valued possessions. Now, I wouldn't say I'm like, you know, my favorite records of all time. I mean, they are, but just they have so much value to me. I'll never get rid of them. This is one again from that period, you know, when I get a little bit blubbery, talking about just kind of like, you know, my awakening period in my life, and beginning to collect records again and really get off on it and enjoy it. This was like a lucky happenstance buy for super cheap. I think I got it. I'm not shitting you. I got it for like a quarter, you know, probably, you know, an armful of records that I bought for like $5 that day. I had a bargain bin, and it's just a really fantastic album. I love everything about them. They're a French-Canadian folk rock band called Beau Dommage. yeah, just a group of like 4 dudes, 1 woman, singing some excellent, it's kind of like, I said they're French Canadian, so everything is in French. It's sung in French, and but it's just magnificent. It's kind of like got those folk rock stylings that you were hearing from like, also Canadian rocker Neil Young, mixed up with like Renaissance, the Prague symphonic rock band Renaissance from the UK in the early 70s, like very cool, similar style. This was like 1975. Just a bunch of really, really fucking excellent tunes. My personal favorite last track on the A side is called Les Pics Bois. I think that means the woodpecker in English. Les Pics Bois, fantastic tune. Everybody check this out. Yeah, this one means the world to me. Just got really good sentimental vibes and feelings. I was just kind of like, when I first heard this, it made me smile, and I listened all the way through the A-side, and then that song, Les Pics Bois, came on. I just had a fucking shit-eating grin from ear to ear. I thought it was so fantastic. Check that out, or the song specifically out, guys. Really cool. Okay, getting down to the last couple here. Everybody, another one I've talked incessantly about, and its personal meanings to me. Just happens to be a collection of film music by one of my favorite composers and, multi-instrumentalists, just extraordinaire. Of course, I'm talking about Mark Isham. I love Mark Isham. Started as a jazz trumpeter and, continued a fantastic career all the way up through today, still composing and primarily film music still. I believe he's won Oscars for the stuff he's done, but this was from his like kind of early to early mid-career, from mid 80s, when he was just kind of delving into compositions for film. 3 of his most famous from back in the 80s, of course, the third being the entire B-side is dedicated to what happens to be my favorite film of all time. It's called Never Cry Wolf, and the entire B-side is pretty fucking epic. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, sheer mastery. Again, I use that silly term all the time, but it is sheer mastery. Everybody check it out. This has always been, like this, I've said before, this was on in the house when I was a kid, and so it has very deep-seated, feelings for me, being a child and listening to this type of music, and just really kind of like popping my brain open and really forcing me to listen to all the subtle, intricate natures of what music can do. And this album stuck with me. I had a copy of it on CD that I took with me when I left my folks' house, right after high school. And so when you're just like kind of just entering the adult world, and you're kind of like, riddled with, anxiety and just all kinds of crazy shit, you're lucky to have that kind of warm blanket. This album has always been my warm blanket, my teddy bear, in a sense, like quite literally, when I would have those crazy fucking nights where, I had to work at like, 5 a.m. and everyone below me is like throwing shit at the ceiling and partying, and, and I'm just like trying to relax. I just put that shit on in my head, and yeah, that's what this album is to me. It just means the world to me. So everybody check it out. Mark Isham's film music, 1987, I believe. Okay, my last ones here, guys. I just wanted to bring these out because of the sentimental value. They're my favorite rock bands. I talk about them all the time, but I was thinking about this, and no bullshit. Like this isn't something I just concocted, to be just kind of like a funny little coincidence, but I shit you not, because they're my favorite band, and this is the way it happened. But the very first cassette tape I ever bought for myself, the very first, with my own money, and the very first CD, the first compact disc I ever bought with my own money, and the first LP I ever bought for myself, all happened to be Pearl Jam albums. My favorite rock band being Pearl Jam. Kid of the 90s, first time I ever heard them. Yeah, I knew what I liked. I knew I was a rock and roll kid, and these guys proved it to me. I shit you not, I saved up $8, that I maybe mowed a lawn, like one lawn, or I did some chores for my folks or something. I got $8. Well, I had $10. Maybe a little more, because I bought 2 tapes that day. The other tape I bought was, of course, Weird Al Yankovic's Polka Party for like $3.99, and this one was like $7.99 or $8.99. And I got, you know, Pearl Jam's first, the 10 album. This is the one. This is it. I've had this. I've been carrying this around for 30 years. Yeah, pretty cool. I was so taken aback and enthralled. I could just put this in and just walk around with it and listen to it, memorize all the lyrics, the cool like unfolding thing, and you just have like Eddie Vedder's dark poetic genius scrawled out in his own handwriting. And yeah, I remember just looking at this intently for fucking hours. You know, I was just amazed by this band, absolutely amazed. Rode my bike down to Fred Meyer's on the corner of 5th and Q Street in Springfield, Oregon, bought this. Yeah, I was one happy fucking 12-year-old that day. And Weird Al Yankovic's Polka Party. Oh man, and then a couple years later, you know, CD technology became affordable for poor kids. Somewhat affordable, but you know, everyone did like the, you know, what was it, the BMG music CD club or the Columbia House thing where you could like, you know, pay $13 and a penny to get like 15 albums or whatever. Like I did that shit, but this was the first album that I like saved up my money, went to the store. Fuck, it might have even been Fred Meyer again. Or no, it was some record store that was like in the mall. Yeah, I felt weird about that, but yeah, this was in 1996 when Pearl Jam released their No Code album. This was the first CD I ever owned. I was so elated. Opened it up and I'm like, what is all this crazy shit? What is all this? Super fucking cool. Hours spent just looking at all of these fucking Polaroids. So cool. And then you crack it open and they even give you a fun little insert with a bunch of Polaroids in it. Super cool. Loved this band. I still love this band, of course. But in 1996, like, this album was the shit. New drummer. They got Jack Irons in the band. I love all these black and white pictures that they always have, and it shows how they do their shit, you know, reel to reel, legit. The track listings are on those cool labels that are, what do you call them? Jukebox, you know, jukebox labels. Fucking awesome. I shit you not, guys. And then it actually happened to be earlier than that release in 1996. I got their first press vinyl release in 94 of my favorite album of all time, Vitology. And yeah, this is the original pressing that I bought the day it was released in 1994. Been carting this shit around for fucking ever, dude. Almost 30 years. Pretty cool. A little bit of water damage. I like left it in a Foot Locker that I had for like storing, you know, baseball cards and pictures, and I had a couple of LPs in there that I had collected through the years, and that shit got like, I think my parents' garage got flooded at one point in time, and that shit got I got a little water damage on it, but whatever, dude, it's priceless to me. It's not even worth anything. first pressing of this shit from 94 maybe goes for like $70. Yeah. But those are my most valued gems, guys. So, like I said, you know, kind of a counterbalance to what I was talking about before. You have valuable, and then you have most valued, and that's them. So I wanted to say thank you very much for joining me this evening and going through that with me, and peace in the crease, and be good to each other, and yeah. Bye, everybody.